Good afternoon and welcome to our B2B marketing webinar in association with Cvent. My name is Cvent Singh. I'm Senior Content Editor at B2B Marketing, and today we are hosting a very exciting session on how to make your events have that extra wow factor. As we know in today's market, creating high quality events from start to finish can definitely be a challenge. In addition, it's worth mentioning that B2B Marketing and Cvent have just released their latest report, How B2B Events Are Delivering on Marketing Goals. So if you like today's session, you'll get a load of other fascinating insights, and you should be able to find that in the right-hand side of our chat. So with that being said, today we are going to be discussing how to effectively plan your B2B events to spark excitement and intrigue from the marketing through to the martech you choose and the venue, how to strategically deliver quality content to keep audiences engaged from the beginning of the event to the end, and unique and interactive ways to increase participant involvement and enhance the overall experience. Before we begin, it's worth saying that we'll also be hosting a live Q&A at the end of today's session. If you look at the right-hand side of your screen, you can pop questions throughout the session, and we'll be sure to get them at the end. And don't be shy about asking questions. I'm sure if someone else has a question, you will too. So without further ado, let's welcome in our panel for today, starting with Shane Redding, our Propolis strategy expert at B2B Marketing.
Thanks, Kavita.
We're also joined with David Morgan, the Senior Marketing Manager at Cvent.
Hi, great to be here.
And finally, we have Carla Barker, the Northern Cluster Marketing Manager at Kodak Delaris.
Hey.
Well, welcome all. It's really great to have all three of your perspectives on today's session. I guess to kick things off, I'd like to start with more of a general question to kind of pick your brain a little bit. How do you think events have transformed in the last year? What are some common challenges that we're facing? And Shane, I'd love to direct the first question to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's such a great topic, so much to talk about. But to me, this transformation, and particularly about thinking how we're going to deliver the wow, we have to instead take a step back. We have to instead ask ourselves, why? Why are we doing it? What is the marketing strategy? And actually, increasingly, what is the business strategy? And where does your events strategy fit to that? And then we can move on to some of the exciting stuff. But I'm working with a lot of businesses who are really having a deep think about the role of events today in their organization. Is it for building reputation? Is it for building relationships? Or, of course, is it that last R, the big one? Is it about more revenue?
Definitely. And Carla, do you have anything that you wanted to sort of add on
that? So yeah, I mean, events have transformed since COVID, and I think a lot more people have introduced more hybrid events, or at least elements of hybrid into their events. And I think this is definitely something that's going to continue going forward for the way that the world is becoming to be at the moment. Trying to get people to events and justify their time and spend and cost and stuff is always a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And David, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with the other two. What we've seen from the reports that we've published and the data we've gathered is that events are back in a big way post-pandemic. Everyone is excited to be out and interacting, but the other thing that's happened is that costs have gone up considerably. So the cost of travel, the cost of venues. So it's a challenge to put on events. So when you're going to justify your budget, back to Shane's point, you know why you're doing it. The challenge then is, can we prove the ROI behind it? So can we prove to our bosses, to the C-suite, why are we taking the event strategy and the mix that we have? Because going back into the pandemic, we got away with virtual for a while, so costs came down naturally, and there was the assumption that you can continue to work in that model. But of course, the world evolves. We go back to in person, but it's important then to justify why the travel, why the event itself, and the ROI data is incredibly important there. And then the other thing I guess for me is that we're seeing we can't do any webinar conversation in marketing without talking about technology and AI. So you don't want to labor the point, but data is allowing us, technology is allowing us now to create some really interesting experiences for attendees. So we're talking about wow factor. There is this ability now to take the data and the technology and use it to create something that sets your events apart, because it is harder to get people to come to events these days. They're a lot more selective with their time. So if you're looking at ways to introduce the wow factor, look at the data you're gathering, whether it's pre, during, or post, so that you know what people are interested in, what they're interacting with, and they'll get a lot more from that experience.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like you have to ask the right questions from the get-go. It's interesting that you bring up pre, during, and post event, because I think we're going to be sort of touching on all three of those stages, starting with sort of the preliminary stages. Let's talk about it. How can you ensure there's sort of high-profile speakers and talent at your event? And Carla, maybe we could start with you for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I think one of the things that you need to consider is who's in your existing network and who are the best people to speak at these events. And this isn't just network as in, you've identified the key influencer or, key person in this field and you go, yeah, I want them, that's great. It's about when you move into an industry or into a new vertical or horizontal or something like that, it's about identifying those key players and getting in touch with them right from the get-go. Keep engaged with them, keep conversations going, keep in touch with them, and provide them with valuable content throughout and valuable conversations. And then over time, you can then start to utilize that network and encourage them to come and speak at your events or see if it's something they're interested in. Or secondly, look at how they can support you build content for these events. So for me, it's definitely utilizing that network, but not just going out there and being like, hey, so-and-so, can you speak at my event? It's that relationship that you've built with this person, which then is going to encourage them because they're going to want to do something for you. Hopefully they like you enough. And then they become a key part of your event.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely think being able to network, but doing it on a sort of strategic level is quite key. Shane, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's really good points that Carla's made there. I think that, understanding from your speaker perspective, and I'm lucky enough to get to speak quite a lot. It's the ones who understand me that take the time. Why do I want to do it? What's in it for me, being selfish? I mean, is there a great network like today? Is it a fantastic brand that enhances my brand? Again, like Cvent, we've been working with them. That ecosystem is super important. And I think we also have to recognize the power also of the right network. Carla's mentioned it. Is this one that can bring through their social selling many more attendees of the right sort to your event? Or have they actually got a brand that actually takes you into new markets? So there's lots of reason to think very carefully about your speaker selection. And increasingly, we see lots of clients being asked to speak, and that's a great way of deepening relationships.
David, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
I agree. I think relationships are the key to good speakers and good content and good experiences. I think, one story I always have in the back of my mind is from someone I spoke to years ago when, during the pandemic, a lot of speakers, especially globally, were able to, were available. A lot of the speaking circuit had closed down, if not all of it. So, and you were able to sort of dial in. So suddenly you had access to global speakers you may not have had access to when you were just thinking about in-person events. And there was an attraction to go out and get real big personalities to come and speak at your events because it looks great having their face on your website. The downside to that is that the passion might not be there for them. It might just be a transactional job, and that then you might suffer with that through the preparation. They might not be as flexible. The content might not be as good. The value might not be there. So it's a cautionary tale almost. For me, it does hark back to that relationship. Find someone who's passionate about what you're doing and what you're talking about, because it'll be a greater experience for everyone all around, rather than just going for the biggest name that you can afford.
Right. See, I was going to ask a question around, with all of that considered, how do you ensure that the content is quality throughout your event? But I mean, Carla, do you think that's pretty dependent on the speakers?
I definitely think it's a huge factor. As Shane and David have mentioned, that if you find a speaker who is genuinely passionate about what your event is about or some of the key topics that you're talking about, that passion is naturally going to come through. I mean, look at all three of us on here today talking about events. We clearly have some sort of passion around it. That's why we're able to talk about and be part of this and hopefully provide great quality content. But I think as well, there's always the other side of it, as in when anyone hosts an event, there's pressure around, we want to try and get all of these messages to people. We want it to be the most valuable, or we want, as David mentioned, ROI, what is that? So I think sometimes people can have a little bit of tunnel vision to, this is what we want to do, and then who can we get to this event, rather than almost mirroring it and going, right, you as attendees, if we wanted to host an event with this key topic or on this or in these areas, what would you want to hear about? AI is a big, buzzword at the moment. However, have they already been saturated with AI information that they don't need to know any more about it, or they're, a bit overwhelmed with it? And therefore, is there another topic that people don't overly talk about, but everyone's like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew more about that. And that, I think, is definitely, and sense check it with other industry professionals, other people that are in this area. And I think that, for me at least, are the key pillars to creating quality content.
Nice. And Shane, I could see you nodding in the corner. Would you agree with what Carla's saying?
Absolutely. And I think the importance of a great brief cannot be stressed enough. If you want good content, the better informed I am. Great brief today. Thank you, everybody. Really understanding what it is that the audience wants to hear. Back to Carla's point, what social listening have you done? What deep dive have you done? What can the salespeople tell you? What's the market insight you've carried out? But also asking them as simple as that. And actually, I'm going to ask all the attendees now, what do you want to know? Post your question. And that's the bit that speakers who enjoy doing this is when I learn things. When I'm put on the spot, it's like, yeah, actually, that person's made me think. That's part of what you get out of going to a live event or a digital hybrid event, is that interaction. And I think actually that's why events are back with real bang, because people are looking not just to consume and listen, but take part. So I think a big thing about the wow is how to ensure people take part.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point around the briefing. And obviously, I always appreciate the Q&A plug. Definitely, everyone get your questions in if you haven't. David, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to that before we move along?
Yeah, just one kind of very, very relatable sort of anecdote, really. I mean, for me, I've mentioned the data before, and it's really valuable stuff, whether it's a brief, whether it's listening, whether it's polling before you go to an event, whether it's the data you captured during event, session data, who's going to what. It's really interesting stuff, because it does make you more informed about what people are interested in. And I went to an event recently, and there were three round tables, and the event organizer, one was on AI, one was on demand, and the other one was on technology. And there was three very different sized rooms, and they gave the biggest room to AI and the smallest one to demand gen. And what was really funny is like three people went to the AI one, and everyone had to go into the demand gen room. And they said, we didn't expect this. And the feedback on the day was, we're just so fed up of talking about AI, the possibility of the potential. We've done it, we've talked about it for 18 months. Let's go and talk about something that is, something else, something more in line with our roots. So there was almost a real-time reversal of the rooms. And that kind of stuff is really, really interesting, because you made assumptions and you didn't sort of validate it. So where you can, try to understand what people are interested in and work with that, because it'll make for much better experiences.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I hate to go into the next question talking all about technology, because we just sort of mentioned that AI antidote. But David, I did want to ask you around sort of the tech stack side of things. When it comes to this tech stack for your events, is there any sort of advice on how to sort of navigate that space just with, the ever-changing tech landscape that we're in currently?
Yeah, it's challenging, isn't it? I mean, if you think about martech, and most people are, getting, if you work in a leadership role, you've got your martech stack, and then sort of the pandemic came along, and people were suddenly asking you, how do you work with virtual events? And of course, event tech has been around for 20 plus years. So if you're an event planner, you're an event professional, you probably have worked with a registration tool or some sort of app for conferences. But I'd say most marketeers, it was probably the first time they got an introduction into these kind of all-in-one event management solutions, where it was just we've never worked with this before, or we've never done this before. So suddenly you're having to think about your event tech as part of a strategic martech operation, or part of a marketing strategy, because it's suddenly part of this world. And if you were then to go around the landscape at a large organization, or even a medium-sized one, and try to sort of work out what tech you're using, you're probably going to find 5 or 6 little small pieces of point solutions, maybe an app for an event, or maybe a webinar platform, or a registration platform. So again, it's about consolidation, making it as easy as possible for your team to put on the best kind of events. Make sure the data is going through your sort of martech stack as easy as possible. So the fewer integrations, or the tighter, the closer integrations you have, the better it'll be for not only the attendee experience, but also for yourself. I've seen examples in the past where you've registered for an event and never got the reminder because the data didn't sync up, and things like that really put you off going to events, because you feel like it's not really taken seriously, or they don't know what they're doing, and that really does is infuriating. And not just the technology, but one other thing that's come up as a result of that is the rise of the event technologists. Suddenly there's a new role within the marketing or the event sort of space, where you have someone now responsible for that event technology. And again, that's really interesting, because I wouldn't say many event planners ever just wanted to get involved in the technology side, that their passion is in creating and running events. So look at where that potential role fits into your team. Do you need it? Understand why they're there, what the success criteria is, and what benefits they can bring to your team.
Yeah, it's funny how some of those small details, like not having, the registration data linked up and whatnot, that makes such an impact. Like you said, it comes off as if it's not being taken seriously. Obviously, that's no one's real intention, but it's just the way it's being portrayed, which is really interesting. Shane, did you have anything that you wanted to sort of add on to that?
I do. I mean, this is a bit of a pet topic of mine, because I love tech and I love data done well. And David's wise words about, keep it simple, cut out the tech bloat. I think there was a phase where we were all off, buying shiny new things and plugging them in. Just don't do that. Just really take a step back and really look at your whole marketing operations and where your event technology fits. And I think one of the most important things, if we're really going to deliver a wow, before we start to use the technology, is to really deeply understand that customer journey. And I do quite a lot of this, and it's a fun thing to do. It's actually something you do in a group, in a room, and you do a customer journey exercise. And you map basically a day in the life of your delegate, but don't just do your delegate. Do your VIP, do your sponsor, do your speaker as separate journeys. Because actually then, to get the best out of your tech, you'll suddenly have that aha moment. Just as you mentioned, Kavita, oops, we didn't join those dots up. We didn't join that data flow. There was no API, or we didn't brief the speaker about this amazing tech that we have that they can use on the day to run a poll, or to see, literally almost see what the audience are thinking. That is quite, when you do that and you do the dual screening live, and I've got this feed of questions coming in, you can tell what the audience are thinking, or you're following the social. And that means, as a good moderator, you can change, back to Carla's point, the direction of the conversation, because they're bored with that topic, but instead they're all talking about something else. Hopefully not the shoes of the speaker, that are all trying to work out whether they're a very expensive brand or not. But I have seen that happen too, which is quite amusing. So yeah, those deep insights to your audience are very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Carla, did you have anything that you wanted to add before we move along?
I think these guys have covered it pretty well.
Great. Well, moving along, obviously a lot of events are being marketed on platforms. Specifically, obviously, we have LinkedIn. How can you make sure that your events stand out from the crowd? And Carla, we could start with you for this one.
Yeah, so first and foremost, do something different. Like, we all know, we've all been on LinkedIn pretty much for years now. We all know that you've got your static post, and then it all, all the rage was the carousel posts, and then there's video, and there's this and this. We all know that video content is digested a lot better than some of the static stuff, and definitely against just worded posts. But then it's looking at ways to integrate new and fun stuff, put something out there that's engaging, tease people with your content, show them why they should come to your event. Because if you just say, we've got this event, here's the topic, here's the time, date, venue, or it's online or whatever, you're not telling people, you're not giving people a reason to attend. They're going to be like, oh, okay, that's great, thanks. Scroll past, see you later, goodbye. There's not even going to register. Whereas if you do something that's a bit cooler, a bit jazzy, more engaging, they're going to scroll through and be like, okay. And secondly, for me, LinkedIn is, how do you reach the most people that you believe are going to be interested in this? So, with the best will in the world, all of our organic followers on LinkedIn, you can do everything possible, but I personally always find it harder in B2B to get followers. B2C, people will follow everyone. B2B, they don't. So then you're only limited to your LinkedIn audience if you're only posting organically. So do those sponsored posts, do those ads, make them engaging. So when they reach people that may or may not have heard of you before, they stop just for that split second and they go, okay, I'm going to watch this. I'm going to watch this 3 second, 5 second, 10 second, whatever it is thing. And I want to understand more because this is really cool. And to me, I think that's definitely the difference between getting engagement on LinkedIn and getting attendees through platforms like LinkedIn than not.
Yeah, very well said. Shane or David, did either of you want to chime in with anything about that?
I agree. I think this is one of the areas where AI is actually, making a real difference. Creatives can be created, tested, deployed, and reiterated very, very quickly, so you can start to test new ideas, new concepts to try and get that attention. Now, that doesn't get you, kind of form fills, but it gets the attention. And then back to what we said at the start, the value is in, are you speaking to the right people? Have you got the right content? And if you marry those two together, then you're onto a winning formula. But yeah, don't just rely on the creative to get you the form fill. But by all means, get out there, test things, try more video, try things that are unique, and try things now that historically were time consuming because they were. Now there are tools out there that can really sort of cut down on a lot of those time scales.
I think the other thing for me is, as well as the time saving that Dave mentioned, is that it's those deep audience insights that their real need and pain point, and we're all short of time. So remembering, why will this event save them time, be practical, be helpful? What is it that it's going to give them which would be really useful? I find very interesting in the senior marketing community, lots of CMOs are going, I'm so deep in the weeds. I have no time to lift my head. I need to get out of the office, meet other CMOs and talk to them about my problems. They don't want lots of being talked at. They don't want lots of expertise necessarily in terms of presentations. What they do want is lots of time to talk to their peers about common challenges. On the other end of the scale, I go to some really wonderful events, including things like the World of Concrete. There, actually what do the attendees get most excited about? Having a go with the trial. I had a go the trial myself, is the difference between two different mixes of concrete. They could try it for themselves, that experiential, hands-on. There's some great B2B events out there.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, really great example as well. Very niche. Was not expecting you to say that. But yeah, that's a really great example to go off of. I guess we can flash forward now to the actual event because we've talked a lot about sort of the planning stages. What are some of the things that you and your staff should sort of be prioritizing on the day? And David, we could start with you for this one, maybe.
Sure. For me, it always goes back to value and the experience. I think, as I said at the start, people are a lot more selective about going to events. The time has become a lot more precious, particularly if it's events outside of working hours. You know, it takes a lot for people to want to give up that personal time. They've become used to more working from home. So you've got to give value, and that's in two ways. That's in the the content, the experience you're going to put on, but also you've got to make them feel special. And of course, depending on the type of event you're running, the experience is going to be very different from a small intimate dinner to a third party trade show at the Excel. So you've got to really try to find ways to make that experience stand out. And for if we take that sort of, if you take any of those, registration, it has to be something that is seamless. When you get there, if you're looking at a trade show or a kind of large kind of conference, then helping people understand where the value is in your event. If you're running multiple streams, you don't want people walking through the door and then suddenly not knowing what to do, because they'll likely just turn around and leave, or they'll slope off early because they don't think there's value there. So how can you help them identify what's important to them? And also, how can you bring people together to network and develop new relationships? Because again, there's nothing worse than going to a sort of large show, not knowing anybody, and then really, building up no relationships through the day. So find ways, whether it's the app you're using, find ways to get people networking, talking, interacting. Shane's example with the concrete's a great one, because it's true, people love experiential marketing. And also for your team, make sure that you're getting something out of it. Make sure that you're getting the data about what's happening, what people are interested in, and make sure you're capturing those leads effectively, because you're at that event for a reason, and that's usually to generate leads or generate experiences and build relationships. Capture that data. Make sure you're doing that effectively. There's nothing worse than being stuck on a trade show, possibly in Germany, and being asked to fill out an Excel spreadsheet of people that you've met during the day, and you're doing that at 6 o'clock at the end of the day, and there's 20 names of business cards. That data is going to be almost worthless come the next day. So just try to figure out what's important to everyone and deliver on those during the day.
Yeah. Carla, what about you? What do you have sort of any other thoughts around that?
I think, I mean, Shane's mentioned it already, a cracking brief. Brief everyone. Tell them exactly what's expected of them, exactly what they need to do. As David's mentioned, why they're doing it, the what's in it for them, what are we trying to achieve, and so on and so forth. I think as well is part of it, for me personally, I bring my personality into a role that I do. And I think sometimes when people are at events, they're almost taught or told to be really almost stoic and very, I am uber professional, this is who I am. And for some people, that's really hard. It's, I am professional, but I am also me. So I think giving people that, I don't know, permission, maybe, I don't think that's the right word, but, still be you. I mean, don't go out and get, drink 15 glasses of wine and make a fool of yourself, of course not, but mingle, engage, be part of it. Don't just be that person that's sort of standing at the edge of the room being like, is everything going okay? Oh my gosh, like it can be more fluid than that, I think.
Yeah, I think that network bit definitely, maybe there's not enough attention brought onto it, because there's so much organizing that goes into all the different sessions and the content and the speakers, that maybe putting everyone into a room and just expecting them to engage and network seamlessly, that doesn't happen. So Shane, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I do. I think what Carla's touched on there is something we don't talk enough about, and that's empowering your team. And the difference, this is about delivering wow. You can only deliver wow if you've planned for brilliant basics. And the brilliant basics, let's be honest about this, are things like, I expect a decent coffee when I arrive, and not to have to queue for it. Unlike when I went to Paris Olympics and expecting a decent coffee because I was in Paris, very nice, but then had to wait 45 minutes and was late to my seat in the tennis stadium. Not a good, brilliant basic. Compare that to London 2012, where I was a games maker, where we were empowered as a team and briefed really well, as Carla said, each morning to look for things that weren't working. And we were given permission to put them right. Not many people know this. It didn't really ever get out into the public domain, but Dorney had the highest customer satisfaction rating of any venue in London 2012 because we had a disaster. The disaster was the week before the stadium was being built, they took out 50 seats because it failed the safety inspection for the grandstand. So they had to take the seats out to make it wider. So there was I, lowly games maker, people coming through, being shown to their seat. It didn't exist. So you had to think on your feet. So we had a plan, which was we knew that on the first day there were lots of seats that weren't occupied in the disabled area. So actually we asked that if the disabled people would mind if we, with their allowed some chairs to go in. That worked on the first day. But then we programmed overnight, the team programmed a special beep on the turnstile using technology, to David's point, to do something amazing, that anybody that came through who hadn't got a ticket with a seat got an alert. We took them onto one side and we did the Disney. You've been upgraded. And then we walked them through the athletes' village and gave them in a seat. And if everybody remembers this about the Olympics, there was lots of fuss because none of the friends and family seats of all of the Olympic family were being used. We filled that stadium. But we were empowered to come up with a solution. And I think that if you're going to create wow, you have to trust your team to come up with answers when things go wrong, because it's not always about everything going right.
I think that sort of briefing is so important. I love the phrase like brilliant basics as well, because it really does go such a long way in terms of your overall experience. So yeah, really, really great example there. Moving along, one thing that I think would be interesting to know is how we can make sure audiences are engaged throughout an all-day event. So there's always, that lull before or after lunchtime. And I think that's something that, it's not necessarily something you can plan for, but is there a way to kind of overcome that? Carla, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yes, I do. I've hosted many an event. I have also been to many an event. For me, there's definitely 3 sort of key areas that I think of. I mean, we've all discussed great content typically brings great engagement. However, sometimes, when I mentioned before, people stack events because it's like we've only got one day to engage with these people. So we're going to put sessions on for an hour at a time, every hour, So people actually go to these events and they're just so overwhelmed with information. Yes, stuff that they might want to hear about and stuff that interests them. However, if a session overruns, they literally have no time to go to the toilet, to grab a coffee, to do anything else apart from going to the next session. Then you're taking more notes and then it's like, into the next session. Okay. So there's that element of create great content and great engagement, but don't overwhelm them. Give people that time to be able to say hello to someone, to have a conversation with a speaker after an event, and more importantly, to go to the loo and grab a coffee, because we all know that these days can be really long. Give them that time. Yeah. Secondly, for me, in my opinion, there are mainly 2 types of people at an event. You've got the people that know everyone, and they're all chatting away, and they're that social butterfly, and they're going through, hey John, how are you? Hey Kath, how's the kids? That sort of thing. You've then got the people, that has been me, that walk into a room and go, oh wow, and you are like a rabbit in the headlights. You don't really know anyone. You don't really know the organisers that well that you can go up and have a conversation. You don't have someone that introduces, this is Carla, this is, John, and blah, 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 blah. You don't have that. So you're going to these events thinking, okay, this is great, you know, I'm interested in these topics, but you almost feel alone and isolated. And at lunch, the most social part of the day, you're standing in a corner by yourself, sadly with your plate, like eating whatever lunch is, because you've got no one else to talk to. So I think for me, the engagement there is do something different, get people talking, whether that's a, you know, an icebreaker thing. I know it's really corny, but I love it. You know, or a more interactive thing or event that gets people talking, you know, maybe put people in different groups and be like, on this breakout, everyone with number 1 on the back of their pass are going to go over there and talk about this topic. Get people, you know, give them that opportunity to speak to other people without having to go up and really be like, like, I do this, what do you do? Because you don't know if you're speaking to a CEO of a massively global organization, or someone that's just come into the industry potentially like you, or someone that's just come in the industry differently. Definitely, I mean, my absolute top tip for any event is make sure that afternoon snacks are good. Make sure you've got sugar, make sure you've got protein for sure, but just make sure they're good, because that's when everyone just gets a little bit of that lull. But when you go out there and you see a really cracking looking cake, I'm all game for the next period.
Yeah, I definitely think elite snacks are very key for any event. So I completely agree with that. David, did you want to add anything to that? It doesn't have to be related to treats, by the way.
I think we could talk for an hour just on the treats, really, because it is important. But I mean, you know, what's really interesting is that, you know, does it have to be a day? To begin with, we are seeing that, you know, people's attention spans are getting shorter. We're seeing that people are more in a rush to get home. It's really fascinating if you look at the data of some events that, you know, when people start to sort of taper out now, it's sort of 3:30, 4:30, which, you know, has probably always been the case, but now we can see it in the data. So are you putting a lot of money and investment into networking at the end of the day when people have left? Well, to Carla's point, bring that into the lunchtime, because they're there, they're going to be there, they're hungry, but also they could be isolated. So that's a perfect opportunity to take what is a problem in some cases and turn it into something that people might find that, you know, that is extremely valuable. They might not have stayed for the networking post because, you know, they might not want to drink, they might be driving, they might have to do the school pickup. So to bring it into the lunch, you know, again, if you're capturing data around how your events work, you can really start to think about things in a very different way. And I love the idea of thinking about the snacks and the experiences, because it comes back to that value. When people look at an agenda and they look at their sessions post 3 o'clock, they're thinking, you know, is there real value here? Is this going to change my life, or can I go home and just sort of catch up on some email, do some work? Well, you know, think about, you know, the type of event as well. Does it need to be fully in person? Could you do hybrid? Could you make the people's lives a little bit easier? And maybe from an accessibility, from a sustainability point of view, you know, that full day might be better off at 2 half days split in different locations, where people might feel more comfortable, you know, traveling to something that's a bit more local rather than commuting to London every single time for that particular event. So again, think about your audience, look at the data if you have it, and try to come up with something it's going to really appeal to them, because you are fighting against sort of apathy towards getting out the house.
Yeah, definitely. And Shane, did you have anything you wanted to kind of add on to that?
Yeah, I think that David's gone to something really important there. We all have choice, and actually my choice might not be the same as David's. I might be very happy to stay for a drink at the end, whereas absolutely somebody else has got to rush off, do a school pickup. And I think we have to recognise that we need to build better personal journeys, more inclusive journeys that actually allow everybody to take part in the way they can or want to. And a good example of this, which I really like to reference, is Brighton SEO. Their research found that they had lots of people working from home who really wanted to come to an in-person event, but childcare was a real struggle. They invested a lot of time and effort to find out whether it was actually possible to have an at-event creche, properly funded, properly managed by childcare experts, and that's been running for a considerable amount of time now. Actually, I checked, and it is still part of your conference package. You can book it so that you haven't got that stress of the train and dashing off. You can stay, and not just for the last hero speaker, but to have some fun too and find your tribe. So they do amazing stuff also, like they do on Brighton Pier, the Battle of the Bands. Who knew it, that within the digital community there are quite so many aspiring rock stars, but apparently there are. And that, back to that lovely point that Carla made, you have a reason then to talk about something completely other than work, and that really can help break down barriers. So I think in terms of wow, and coming back to that theme of this session, we've got to work harder at understanding what is the wow that the individuals want, and then create their groups and tribes, as David said, to help them come together to find, and learn together.
Yeah, really great. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I mean, are there any tips or unique things that you can do to keep your audiences engaged? Maybe something interactive? Like, are there any examples that we can maybe bring up? Because I do really love some of the ones that we've been already kind of talking about. Shane, would you want to start for that one?
I'll give you one, and I'll give you one which was it's a hybrid event, and it is very hard sometimes when you've got audience in person and you've got an energy in the room, and then you've got your people on the screen. And I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical about this, but in order to get the energy up for the afternoon session, we started it with a meditation app. It was absolutely brilliant. As 3 minutes meditation app, we all had to do it. And the afternoon session, the quality of the thinking that we had in the workshop was phenomenal. And also, it depends on your persona, but another one that's lovely to do is gamification of things. There are certain personas, shall I say, I'm being very typecast here, but salespeople do like a good competition, whether it's it's the virtual boxing or the scale electrics or fun. Just let's have some fun. What can we build in? And that really brings energy back into a room.
Yeah, definitely. Carla, do you have any examples or tips that you would give?
For me, if there's an opportunity to win something, I'm all in. I don't work in sales, but I am definitely that competitive type. So if there's like okay, all right, and I feel that there's an opportunity, I'm all in.
Yeah,
Nice.
Definitely. I'm in the middle of planning Cvent Connect, which is our flagship event happening in November, and I'm talking to a lot of the speakers behind the scenes, and kind of sort of carrying on from Shane's point, one of them who's coming from the US to do the event, she went, I don't really care about the agenda. When are you going running? Because for them, that was the whole running around London was this phenomenal experience they get to, they don't really have. And the fact that we were doing a little running club in the morning, probably only be 5-10 people, doesn't really matter. For them, that made the whole thing way more attractive. And I've seen this with colleagues. They will go for a particular thing because they have to go. So they're trying to make it an experience for them, because we're all human at the end of the day. We want some fun as part of it. We don't want to dread going to something. So like everyone else said, try to find ways to sort of humanize things and bring out people's enjoyment factor, whether that's games, competitions, conversations, making people feel included, whether that's, and we haven't talked about accessibility at all really, but think about your audience. Are you making that event as accessible for everyone? Because there's nothing worse than creating a great experience and then it falls flat because there are some limitations that you didn't take into consideration. So the humanization of B2B and humanization of marketing, I think is fundamental.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because all of those answers, it's if you're hosting a marketing event, that doesn't, what you're doing, if it's a battle of the bands or connected to wellness or running, that doesn't have to necessarily connect directly to marketing necessarily. Maybe there is a link that you can make, but I do think that's quite important to kind of have that human aspect. I think before we wrap things up, I'd love to direct one last question to you, David, and I'll open it up to you and Shane, or to Shane and Carla in a bit. But do you have any prediction for where you think events are heading at all?
I mean, it's dangerous being in the prediction game at the moment. I think it's very hard to sort of think beyond 12 to 18 months. But I think really for me, there are sort of three themes. I think over the next 12, 18 months, we're going to be talking more about innovation, personalization, and flexibility. I think innovation we've talked about in different contexts, but there are lots of opportunities for innovation, whether that's, we talked about data and capturing data, but there's also, VR, AR, all this augmented reality stuff. There are things that are happening now with events where it's giving you the possibility to create some really unique experiences for people, and also to understand in real time what people are thinking of the sessions, whether that's sentiment analysis or the innovation is really, really exciting, in this industry. So I think there's lots there. But again, going back to what we've talked about, look at the personalization, look at the value. People are really, really very mindful of their time. So for me, think about the value for your audience. Why are they coming? How are you going to make it stand out? How are you going to make it more compelling than anything else that they might have to look at for that week, and focus on those, because that's where success lies.
Really well said. Carla, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or any predictions for where you think events are going?
Not really. I think the only thing for me is, one of the things that I've definitely found is having more content available online post-event. So for those people that can't attend these events, they can still be part of it. I know it's not in like the live setting, but they do have the opportunity. They're not missing out on valuable content, insight, training, whatever it is, because they can't physically attend the event because it can't be justified through budget. It can't be, they can't make it because of other commitments. And I think, for me, that's how I want to see events going forward, not just being this gated thing that unless you pay, even for the free ones mainly, like if you can't get here, you don't get anything. But I mean, I would also secondly throw that question out to our attendees. What do they think? Do they think the same as us? Do they predict something else? Do we, that's definitely it, just because that's what I think, that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. Shane, did you have anything?
Yes, I think I'll return to where I started and back to the strategy of, why are you doing it? I think a trend which is definitely here for the next year is, traditionally events have been seen very much as an acquisition, to get new customers. But there's always been value in reconnecting and building relationships with existing customers. I'm seeing that deepen, and I'm seeing more budget go into that, in that building of relationship and reputation. And I think there's that understanding, particularly in B2B, the lifetime value of a customer is an individual. When they move companies, they take you with them, hopefully. There's the lifetime value of a company buying from you. And I think I'm seeing that being built and baked into events more. Definitely AI is a trend, even though, they've said there is a bit of, a bit of exhaustion. But the reality is we are absolutely just at the tiny starting point of what it's doing for us. And I am super excited about how, to Carla's point, we can repurpose our events. We can re-chunk the content afterwards. We can use it in so many different ways. So stop thinking of an event as an event. It actually now it's a part of our content production, which you then are delivering in a different way. It becomes a channel. And I think that's quite a switch, particularly for event planners, to take that mindset. And then lastly, and I've sort of touched on it already, there's this real need to sort of understand that humanization, as David mentioned, the Disneyfication, and really, really stretch yourself to deliver wow through using 6 senses. I think we tend to use 2 or 3. We have 6. Go all out. Use all of the tech we have, but really, really be inventive and really think about how you can engage on every level.
Yeah. Wow. Really great note to finish our conversation with. Well, those are all my questions. We are going to get to the Q&A in a little bit. But I think before we do that, I'm just going to have a quick look. Yep. So if you'd like to earn a $100 Amazon gift card, please sign up to complete a demo with Cvent. We'll pop that link in the chat. And to any recipient outside the US, the gift card can be converted from $100 US to another currency available of your choosing. Great. Well, I think we can get into a couple questions. And I'm really glad that this one actually was asked. So, because I think we've talked a little bit about the preliminary stages and during the event, but maybe not enough around sort of the post-event side. So post-event, what should teams be focusing on in terms of measurement? And Shane, I'd love to start with you if that's okay for this one.
So back to your strategy, set your KPIs according to what you're doing it for. If it's revenue, then obviously you're trying to track it all the way through from that stand visitor taking their data to having a demo to then having a visit, all of the classic stages that you'd be measuring through your event platform and into Salesforce. If it's relationship, then you're going to be looking at different levers. Again, have they changed their minds by coming along to an event? Have they realized that you maybe offer more products than they were not aware of? And reputation, has it enhanced the way they think about you? I think David made two very important points we haven't talked a lot about today, and that is accessibility and sustainability. And if they are a core part of your company's purpose, even if they're not, you have to be genuinely deliver those. And so maybe they're now thinking about some of the things that you're doing. Maybe your event does something as part of a giving back into the local community that delivers on a different level. So for me, measurement is about the why. Why are you doing it? And then your KPIs, and then measuring back to that metric.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Shane, first, because I know you kind of kicked things off with that strategy bit. And I had a feeling you'd bring that up again. But David, is there anything that you wanted to sort of add to Shane's answer?
I think that's the perfect answer, really. There isn't much more you can add to that. The only thing that I would say is make sure you have KPIs. We talked all the way through this, assuming that it is you're lucky enough to be in an organization where conversations about KPIs or measurement happens. I've been historically in the past in situations where people have said, oh, we do this event because we've always done it. And I think, that's very, very hard to swallow, especially if you're a budget holder and that's budget that you don't see you're getting a good return on. But, so you have to then start that conversation. You have to try to bring people along on that journey with you to start putting in place measurements, even if you don't announce it publicly to begin with, and you bring the data and the analysis retrospectively. Try to bring people into a situation where they will start to have a better conversation about why you're doing something.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, great. Well, Carla, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to sort of add before we move on.
The only tiny bit is, we've got internal KPIs. Have we got sales? Have we got this? Have we got that? I mean, the 3 R's that Shane mentioned. For me, one of the things that I always try and gather, which isn't the easiest thing to do, is the value to the people that attended this. Would you, if we hosted something like this again, would you come? Did you feel that the money, time, etc., all the stuff that you moved or cancelled to come to this event was worth doing? Because ultimately, we could potentially somehow hit the majority of our KPIs, but if people are coming and going, what the hell did I come here for? To me, it's pretty pointless. And all of that can help you in future events going forward.
Yeah, definitely. Really great points. We have another really great question. How to balance the experiences delegates get at hybrid events. So those online versus those in the room, which I don't think we've talked too much about today. But David, did you want to maybe start with this one?
Sure. I mean, it's a great question because hybrid events have really carved out a place for themselves in the mix now. I think people post-pandemic would straight back to sort of in person, but hybrid and virtual taught us a lot about the value of reaching out to larger audiences virtually. And we've learned some things that production quality doesn't necessarily need to be Hollywood level to do a good hybrid event. But again, from a sustainability point of view, there are so many benefits to having a good hybrid event, because you can give people a lot of the value without a lot of the travel. So look at where your audiences are and try to figure out the why. Why are you doing this and what's the value? Because you can do some very interesting things with hybrid. You can give them exclusive content that you don't necessarily give to people in the room, One thing we do at Cvent Connect is we have Cvent TV, which gets played to people who join, virtually, that people in the room won't see. And it allows us to go backstage and give some really, interesting Q&A and content for people joining virtually. And it makes them feel special. It makes them feel like they're truly part of the event. And also the experience of joining, from a hybrid location, whether you have dial-in parties, whether you have sort of sites where people can congregate and network to join into a hybrid. It's fascinating what you can do with a hybrid event. So again, but for me, it comes back to the understanding what you're trying to get out of it, understanding your audience, and build a plan. But for me, I love the virtual side of hybrid. I think there are so many people that you would not necessarily get coming to an in-person event. So treat them to something experiential that you can't give to people in the room.
Yeah, definitely. I like that sort of point. Shane, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or Carla?
I think it's building on that planning. I think that's really it's so important, because sometimes you do see events that it's just, to be honest, that the digital is just an afterthought. It's just been, you can tell it's been plonked on, and that's not great. Where it's built from the beginning, and that different experience if you're joining virtually, I think having really good moderators makes a huge difference, because actually making them feel equal valued, taking the questions, having discussion. You can even do exercises, make them interactive. It should not just be broadcast. I think that's really important. But you can use video in an amazing way. You can do that, you can show more, which is great. I think also I've seen across Europe some really good, innovative, where people joining from home have been sent a nice packet of biscuits. You'd be happy, Carla, to have along with your coffee, So just recognizing and trying to give them a bit of stash, because we all like a bit of stash when we go to an event, just thinking about a little bit of extra.
Yeah, and Carla, did you have anything you wanted to kind of piggyback off of?
No surprise, mine will be about food. Very much, I was thinking more around, how do you make those people feel like they're in the room, not just from the content, but the actual, send them a little lunch pack, send them the biscuits, send them, some swag or whatever it is. So actually when they're there, they feel like they're part of it. They can sit down and have their lunch, and potentially, depending on what you're doing over that lunchtime period, but they can network with people over sandwiches or cakes or, whatever that is. I don't know whether many people would do that, budget constraints, etc. But if I was attending a virtual event or a hybrid event and got sent lunch, for me, that would be like, oh my gosh, these people have really thought about including me in this, rather than, only the people that are there because they've had to hire a fancy venue and pay for catering and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So I had a client who did that in the US, and they did it very simply through Deliveroo vouchers.
Yeah.
Really simple option.
Yeah.
And
really good.
Just worked really good. Worked really well.
Well, no one's going to be mad about a Deliveroo voucher, so it's a win-win. I can see we have a couple more questions. We have a few more minutes to answer them. So we have another one coming in, and this is from Maria Martini. Sales colleagues as allies, which insights can they bring from the field in the event planning to achieve that wow effect? Shane, I could see you nodding. Would you want to start with this one?
I'm so glad to hear that question, because they have such deep knowledge about what their customers do and don't like. And that, it's those anecdotal throwaways that happen that when they're in a meeting, that they might tell you that, I absolutely love this about event. I think that example we mentioned earlier about that running around London, it's the sort of thing the sales will say, they're really into. In my case, it was, it's tennis. Let's have a fun tennis tournament at the end of the day. And those insights in particular into key accounts, but also hot topics. I think, their knowledge of the pain points, they can articulate them so well and say, well, this is what they're really struggling with at the moment. So they've got so much value to add.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of goes back to the briefing bit as well. Just this is something that you can, tell your sales colleagues, this is what you're going to be doing, and this is what you should be prepared going into it. Carla, did you also want to add on to that?
I did, almost mirroring what Shane said, but they also give you the gossip from other events, so especially competitor events. So potentially, oh my gosh, they tried to do this and it was a complete flop and it was awful. Or like Shana said, that was great, or the food was really rubbish. So that gives you key insight to make sure what is a focus, I suppose, at your event. They had this as food and everyone complained about it. Well, make sure your food is really good and you've got sugary snacks in the afternoon, obviously. But but that's sort of like that almost gossipy element of it, and that feedback is like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do what they did, I'm going to do this instead, and everyone's going to remember how bad that is, so this is already going to make my food good.
Nice.
I mean, that's
David, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I mean, very quickly, I part of my role is on the APM side. So without the sales input, you really struggle to sort of get that intimacy of the account. So not thinking about the big trade shows or the big sort of day road shows, but if you're thinking about the intimate events, that really is down to the success is down to the sort of the sales team bringing that insight to the table and working with you to sort of devise what is going to work rather than what you think off the shelf you've done before. So it's vitally important. If you can't get that, then I think again, you've got to try to find people in the organization. It doesn't necessarily come from sales. Sometimes it comes from professional services or it comes from customer support. My personal favorite in the past used to be inside sales. Go if you want to know what's like really irking some people, go to speak to your support or your inside sales teams, and you'll get an abundance of content topics that you can use for your next event for sure.
A couple minutes left, and this is probably a really great question to end on. If there's one thing to take away from this session, what do you think it would be? And I mean, we've talked about loads today, so it's hard to just choose one. But Carla, maybe we could start with you.
I think for me, apart from good snacks, is think about the whole event. We've spoken about, I think it's so easy sometimes to just have that tunnel vision approach on, this is our event, we need to make sure that this is great, we're getting the right content across, we're hitting our KPIs, we're getting ROI, all of that stuff. That the before and after definitely don't have as much focus. It's like, oh, well, we need to do pre-event and we need to do post-event, but this is like, the event is the thing that we need to put all of our effort into. As David mentioned, when you don't even get an event reminder, and that could just be a complete forgotten element, we've all done it, but treat the before and after just as important as the event itself. You might not have to do as much for before and after, but make sure that that is definitely a key part of what you're doing when you're planning, executing, looking at, strategizing, all of that. That is just as important as the actual event itself.
Shane?
It's so interesting. Wise words from Carla. I was going to say the same thing, is allow yourself time to think. I see so many teams. There's one I'm working with at the moment. I feel their pain. Event team across EMEA have 46 events running in October. That's more events than there are days in the month. Now, where are they getting their time to think and learn? So less is more. And I absolutely passionate about, what did you learn from that last event? What can you make it better? You have time to do that unless you plan it in and have time to literally breathe in their case. So I think there's a really wise words, a much time going into what happens afterwards as the day itself, because that'll just make it a much better event next time. Nice.
And David, we'll wrap up with you.
Yeah, thank you. The last word for me. I like that. That's a rarity in my life. I would say, if you've enjoyed the content, right, there's a report at the end of this. Yeah, so take a look at that. But also, there's a lot you can skill up on topics very, very quickly. So if you've enjoyed the topic, if you like looking into some of this, then come to Cvent Connect in November, because you're going to hear from an abundance of experts in the field of event tech, creating wow factors, leading it at a global level. There's so much content over 3 days. It's well worth your time if this is a topic of interest. So if you want more, that's the place to go.
No, shameless plug.
Shameless. Well, yeah. I work in marketing, don't you know?
Well, I think that's a great note to leave on. I think that's also about all the time we have for today. Thank you, all three of you, very much for sharing your expertise with us. And to our viewers, please, like David said, check out the report we've just released. If you found today's session helpful, it can be found in the chat. If you'd like to hear more from David, Carla, or Shane, I'm sure they wouldn't mind if you reach out to them on LinkedIn. And if you want to watch back this session at a time that suits you, everyone will receive an email with the link to the on-demand session. And I think that is about it. So thank you very much, and I'll see everyone again soon. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.